let's do attendance to make sure who we have. We have Dan Conrad, Anitra Spennett, Gloria Nodden, Joyce Riley, Debbie DeBacco, Kathy Harling representing the school board, Linda Weller.
Here.
And Allison DeBoard representing the village. And myself.
Hi.
Is there anybody who I missed? And we do have several guests here tonight. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and if we could all stand, pledge the flag. I'm the only one with a flag in front of me, but if we could all stand, appreciate it. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Everybody can, all of a sudden I have a brain freeze. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I've only done that 7,000 times. All of a sudden I get a brain freeze. Okay, has everyone had the opportunity to review the agenda? We do have some additions, as I indicated. Under old business, an update on the weather vane. It was donated by the Wolcotts. The book mobile, or book vending machine. And also under new business, adoption, accepting of grants and donations for specific purposes. All right. Were there any other items to add to the agenda? Could I have a motion to accept the amended agenda then?
Terry, did you get my email that I had sent that I would like added?
No, I did not. What did you wish to add?
It was a page out of the handbook. I can send it. It's in your mailbox. I'll send it. Just about the trustees and the responsibilities with the board or with the staff at the library.
Okay. And where will that go? Under new business, old business?
Probably new.
Okay.
I think it's I forgot what page it was.
Is it in the bylaws and policy handbook?
Yes.
Okay. One of the first discussions I wanted to have was the use of Robert's Rules of Order. I sent out information on that. A couple of things. According to Robert's Rules, it is not necessary for us to have a full disclosure of all the discussions that the board has on every item. They actually say that what is important is that we have the motions that occur, who made them, who seconded them, and what the result of the motion, what the result of the vote is. So for instance, we've got in our email a variety of things that came in for our minutes for actually 3 or 4 different meetings, and we could reduce them substantially in length. So
we're just going to go back to the way we used to do minutes with just in favor, oppose.
Yes, the listing of the motion, who made the motion, who seconded, and the results of the vote. For some, there are times when it's appropriate to record the discussions because it's just a discussion of what's going on, ideas and things like that. So that would have a greater extent of discussion, but we really don't have to talk about everything somebody says about a motion. My question is everybody comfortable with that? And let me put it differently. Is there anybody that's uncomfortable with that? Hearing no discussion, we'll accept that we're going to go back to just the motions, and they have to be the correct motion. So watching your emails that they are the correct things, and who and how the vote ended up. All right, we need to elect our remaining officers, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. I had a couple of thoughts. One was, and I expressed this in an email, what is that a lot of us are thrown together and we really don't know each other. I did know Joyce and Gloria before I got on the board. Actually, Joyce spoke at one of my programs that I had years and years ago when I was working at the Urban League. But most of the other people I've never met before they came on the board. And I think that might be true of a lot of people. I'm wondering, would it be helpful if people kind of talked a little bit about themselves, talked about what some of their experiences have been, how they think they could help with the library and that kind of thing. Do people want to do that so that they have a little better knowledge of who they're voting for? Yes, I see a head shake.
Actually, I think that's a great idea. If we can just keep it to like 3 minutes, you know, we don't want to know a whole bio, you know, a complete bio, but it would be nice to know where people are coming from.
Okay. All right. If you want, I can start it out to kind of give people what they want, or we can move on. As you know, I'm Terry Wilbert. I did not grow up here. I grew up in central New York, and I lived for a long time on the eastern part of New York. I've worked as a school counselor. I've worked as an assistant principal. I've worked as a principal. I've served several interim positions, including director of this library, director of a small nonprofit. I've done interim positions as school administrators in a couple of different districts. And I've been involved in boards probably for the last 50 years, running the gamut from student government in college and in a university with over 10,000 students, and our budget was well over $600,000 back 50 years ago. If you want to do the math, that's a lot of money now. And I was basically a chief financial officer, even though I was vice president. And I've been involved in a variety of youth committees. I was on the Orleans County Youth Board. I've been involved in youth sports, creating different opportunities for kids. And I've been on school board and church board and library board. That's me in a very quick nutshell. We want to go alphabetically. Anitris, did you want to say something? Uh-oh.
Oh, hey. So if anybody that doesn't know, I'm Anitris Bennett. I grew up here, born and raised. I did move away for a year, but I came back. I attended GCC, got my associate's degree in business administration. I attended SUNY Empire State College, where I got my bachelor's degree in business finance and business management with a concentration in marketing. Let's see, what else do people want to know about me? I just kind of volunteer my time, and if anybody knows, my husband is a coach for 3 sports, so I'm forever and a day nominated to join any type of recreation event, concession stands, whatever to do to help out. The library board has been the first thing that I've joined. I was always kind of curious, but I think it opened my eyes to a lot of things because I really wasn't aware of all the different boards there are in Albion, like the youth board and the United Way and all of that good stuff. So I didn't know anything about that stuff. So it's opened my eyes to a lot of things to make me want to reach out more to the community to find different ways to be able to give back, because I do still have a son in school. My kids grew up here. I have 3 kids. My son is 14, going in high school this year. So just looking for ways to just make things a little better for him as far as learning, education, reading, sports, whatever I can do, that's what I want to do. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
I think alphabetically, Dan, you'd be next, I guess.
Yes.
I'm Dan Conrad. I'm on the library board here. Was just elected to a new 4-year term. I'm on the Rock the Park committee. My part there is to initiate kids games, which Terry was there, and he's also on the committee there, and seeing how well that went over last year. Active member of the Lions Club. I run my own youth organization in Albion where I have a youth fishing derby every year. I take kids hunting. I get them outdoors. I do use summer fun buckets for the kids. I hand them out. I'm also currently working on getting a grant right now to get in a community center in Albion, which I believe is, well needed in here. So, I just try to stay as involved in the community as I can. I do a lot of volunteer work with Hands for Hope as well. I'm going to start working with Ministry of Concern with some troubled kids and families and stuff. So I'm just out there trying to help wherever I can and look forward to giving a lot of my ideas and stuff here to the library.
Okay, Allison, I think you would be next alphabetically.
So I'm Allison DeBoard. I grew up in Medina. I've been living in Albion for about 4 years. I moved here when I met my husband. He has 2 daughters, my stepdaughters. They are 13 and 10. I just finished up my school librarianship master's program in May, and hopefully going to find a position in that at some point when this whole COVID thing settles down. Got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Empire State College. Let's see what else. I did serve on the Hoag Library board for about 1.5 years as the secretary there. My cousin was on the board there and she introduced me to that. So I do have a little experience with that. That's a little bit about me.
I think Debbie, you would be next.
Okay, I'm Debbie DeBacco. I'm originally from Niagara Falls. I got my degree in criminal justice from RIT, and I had 24 years at Kodak in security and then in health and safety communications. I work currently for a online education company, and we have been outrageously busy, especially since COVID. I moved to Albion 22 years ago when my son was born, and at that point got involved in the school, the church. I play in the St. Joe's Bell Choir, and I got involved with the library because at one point when I didn't have a job and I couldn't go buy books, all of a sudden I rediscovered what an incredible asset the library is. And so that's what led me to where I am now. So this was a very quick one. Thank you.
Mrs. Harling, did you want to tell us about yourself, or I don't know if you wanted to run for an office?
I don't know that I'm interested in running for office. I probably have enough on my plate already, but I appreciate it. But I'm Kathy Harling. I'm from the Albion School Board. I've been on for 3 years, I believe. I have 2 years left. I'm in my second term as president. Prior to school board, I did PTA for quite a while, and I represent kids here in Albion and Family Court. I have 3 kids in the Albion district. One just graduated and the other 2 are in high school, and married to Steve for 24 years. So that's a little about me. And I appreciate you all having me tonight. Thank you.
Gloria, I believe you would be next.
I'm Gloria Nauden, and I've been on the library board. I think this is my last year. This is my 4th year on the board. I'm living in Waterport. I've lived in the area for 48 years. But prior to that, I was living in Rochester, New York. And it was a challenge when I first moved out here to this area. I worked for Orleans County for 28 years in job development. I was nominated, I did receive Employee of the Year. And I was a supervisor there. And at that point, I was responsible for reading the state regulations, trying to interpret the regulations, and then would hold a staff meeting to make sure we were in compliance with the regulations for people on temporary assistance. I've been involved with the United Way Board, involved with PTA. Many years ago, I ran for school board. It was 3 of us, and I lost by maybe 11 votes. So that's about it for me. And I do not have a desire for any office.
Joyce, you would be next. You're still.
Oh, my name is Joyce Riley, and I'm going to try and be very quick because I'm a native Floridian. I moved to Albion when I was 10. I was a tall, skinny girl. That's all I remember. And I remember my first teacher in Albion School, whom I adored. He used to pick at me all the time, but he always inspired me. I graduated, became a nurse, got married, and immediately left the country. Sounds familiar? Right. So I ran away from home. I really ran. So I lived abroad in Tanzania, Algeria, and the Soviet Union. Then I finally decided to come back home. But did I stay in Albion? No. I decided I'd take a job in New York City. So I took a job in New York City where I had been, prior to going abroad, I was like I practiced as a nurse for about 1.5 years, but my love was always OR nursing. And so I got a job in the OR, and in less than 6 months, they had me teaching new nurses OR nursing. So from that point on, most of my nursing career was in a leadership role. I got married, came back to Albion, and I worked for the county as a child protective caseworker and also as an adult protective caseworker. I enjoyed the adult, hated the children part, hated to see children suffer. I then later on went back to New York City, and then from New York City, I went to DC, running ambulatory surgery center. And then when I became ill, I took a role as, I call it herding physicians. If any of you have ever tried to get information out of your doctor on a visit and how difficult it is, well, imagine having 600 of them that you have to make accountable for their action. So that was the last job I had before I retired and came back home. When I came back home, I really wanted to get involved with things. So many of you know that I ran for mayor, and I lost by 39 points. So there, I understand what you're saying, Gloria. Close but no cigar. And I became a member of the Cobblestone, and also of the Medina Hospital Foundation Board. No longer a member of the Cobblestone. I am a member, but I'm no longer on the board. But I am on the Medina Foundation Board. I've always loved the library. I volunteered for a while to work in the library, and I love working in the used book section. And so when I ran for school board and didn't get it, but later was appointed, and they asked what committees were we interested in, I said the library board. And I was very fortunate and blessed to have the opportunity to work with everyone last year. And I consider it such an important, I know election's over and I'm not running for election, but I do consider the library such an important place in the community, not only from a learning perspective, but from a security for people that are seeking shelter and stuff like that. So I'm very happy to be part of this board and to be part of continuing to have it grow and be vital part of.
Right, and that would bring us to Linda Weller.
Hello, everyone. Linda Weller. I'm on the school board. This is my beginning of my second 5-year term. I had a year off. I moved into Albion 30 years ago from Hilton, New York, with my husband, Mitch. I don't know what the math is, but I think we've been married 35 or 36 years. I don't really know. I started out as a computer programmer. I have done speaking engagements at conferences and women in technology, mentor women in technology. I think that's about it. Oh, I volunteered in the school for 22 years while all my kids were in there. I was on so many different committees in the school, the building leadership teams, progress, everything, every team that you could possibly imagine is a leadership team, and all 3 buildings I was doing that. I was on interview committees. So I have a lot of.
Okay, so we've kind of had a brief introduction to all the various board members and some of the things they've been involved in the community. I'd like to move forward to start with nominations for the office of Vice President. Do we have any nominations? Any nominations for Vice President?
My computer's froze.
Oh,
Terry, you were muted for a long time, so I didn't hear anything that you said.
Neither did I.
I'm sorry.
Mine keeps saying internet unstable.
okay. Now that we've had a brief introduction of all the board members, if we could, I'd now entertain nominations for the office of Vice President. Any nominations for the office of Vice President?
I would just like to nominate Dan Conrad for Vice President. And I nominated him before, so I feel that I have to stay with that nomination.
So we have a nomination of Dan Conrad for Vice President. Do we have a second for that nomination? Is there a second for the nomination?
I'll second.
We have a second for the nomination, Allison DeBoard. Are there any further nominations for Vice President? Any further nominations for Vice President? Any further nominations for Vice President? With that, could I have a motion to close the nomination?
Terry,
yes.
Linda Weller got kicked off.
Oh, okay.
She's trying to get back on.
All right. We'll hold off then.
Okay.
I just got back, sorry. But it just kicked me off. I was completely gone.
All right.
Mike just come over and said he's trying to work on the internet problem now.
Okay. I will repeat it again. So we have a nomination for Vice President, Dan Conrad. Are there any further nominations for Vice President?
I'd like to nominate Anitris.
We have a nomination for Anitris Bennett. Do we have a second? I have a second from Joyce Riley. We have 2 candidates for Vice President. Are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations for Vice President? Since there are no further nominations, could I have a motion to close the nominations for Vice President?
Motion to close. This is Debbie.
Debbie made a motion to close. Could I have a second? All in favor, raise your hand. Debbie, I can't see you, so I'm going to assume since you made the motion that you're in favor. Okay, so now we go to voting. We have 2 choices. One is a show of hands, or we can go with a secret ballot. The way we would do secret ballot, those of you who are remote, I will give you Mike's phone number and you can text him who you would like. What is your preference at this point? This is up to the board.
I would suggest a show of hands.
All right. Anybody else? Show of hands is fine with everyone?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor of Dan and okay. The only one I can't see is Debbie. All right, all in favor of Dan Conrad. And remember, because we have 9 members, the bylaws say it has to be a majority of the board. That means we need 5 votes for any one office at this point. All in favor of Dan Conrad, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, and I'll say 4. All in favor of Anitris? I have 1, 2, 3.
Anitris?
And Debbie is 5. Okay, we do have a vice president. It is Anitris. Now we have the office of secretary. So let me just say, the office of secretary, they receive the notes from the our recording secretary that we have, and they are to get them into a narrative style indicating what the motions are and things like that. They're to be posted within 2 weeks of our meeting. And then at that point, and make sure that all the board members receive them. And then at that point, they are sent, we approve them at the following board meeting, assuming they're approvable. So there is quite a bit of work with that. One of the things also is the secretary needs to sign the minutes as well. Some of the things said the president should also sign them if they're going to be published, but we aren't really publishing them. They're not putting them in a newspaper or anything of that nature. So at this point in time, I would entertain nominations for secretary. Any nominations for secretary? This always seems to be a position that no one wants.
I would like to nominate Joyce Riley.
We have a nomination for Joyce Riley. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have Debbie DeBacco seconding the nomination. Are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations?
Yes, I
Okay.
would like to nominate Allison. I think it's a great way to get introduced.
So we have a nomination for Allison DeBoard. Do we have a second? Dan Conrad seconds, as does Anitris. Are there any, so we have 2 candidates. We have Joyce Riley and Allison DeBoard. Are there any further nominations? Any further nominations? Any further nominations? We need a motion to close the nominations for secretary. Could I have, we have Gloria who makes a motion. A second, please. Dan? All in favor, say aye, or raise your hand. Opposed? Let's move on to voting. I assume we want to do it the same way we did before, by a hand vote. All in favor of Joyce Riley, please raise your hand. And Joyce and Debbie, I can't see you. Kathy, I can't see you either.
My hand's raised.
Okay. 2, okay, I see 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't see Joyce still.
Joyce has disappeared. I can't see me either.
Which way are you voting? We have 4, I think. Raise your hands again, folks, because 1, 2, 3. Dan, did you hand it? 1, 2, 3. Debbie. Okay, that's 4. Okay. And Joyce, I need your vote. I can't hear you.
I'm voting for Allison.
Okay. So that's 4. Now votes for Allison DeBoard. Everybody in favor of Allison DeBoard? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to leave it up to me to vote. Okay, I'll vote for Allison. Great. Since huh? Yeah, Joyce wouldn't vote for herself.
Well played,
No.
Joyce.
Yeah, that's
Because
why I
I
voted.
recommended-
Joyce had no confidence in herself, so I voted for Allison.
I can be Allison's backup.
Okay. And
So
last,
when you're not there, I'll do the minutes.
and the last office is for treasurer. They're a signatory on the checking account, as is the vice president and the president. They are to sit down with the library assistant and prepare the reports and understand them. They are also automatically on the finance committee. So do I have any nominations for treasurer? Do I have any nominations for Joyce?
I would like to nominate Gloria. She did a nice job the last year.
I have a nomination for Gloria. Do I have a
Did you
second?
do it? No. Did you do it? Or did I get it wrong? That was you, Anitris, right?
I did
Anita
it.
seconded.
Wait, no.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
So I have a nomination for Gloria as Nauden as treasurer. Do I have any further nominations?
Can Anitris do it again?
No, she's vice
She's
president.
got vice president.
You know, I
That's
said
two
one.
jobs.
Anitris, I think she wants it.
Any further nominations? Any further nominations? Seeing no further nominations, can I have a motion to close the nominations for treasurer? Anybody want to make a motion? Okay, Kathy Harling makes a motion. A second, please. Anitris? With that, we have a motion and a second to close the nominations. All those in favor, raise your hand, please, or say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Could I have a motion to have the secretary cast one ballot for Gloria Nauden? It's called a white ballot. Somebody want to make that motion? Or
I'll
would you
make the
rather vote?
I make the motion that we cast one ballot for
Okay.
for Gloria Nauden for treasurer.
Do we have a second? Dan? Okay. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so Gloria is now our treasurer. So let's move on. The next thing we have is we actually have 4 sets of minutes that we have to deal with. We have the May, let me pull it out. July 24th, June 10th. And I had the May meeting minutes printed out as well. Oh, I can't find them. Oh, here they are. So the May 13th minutes. Did everyone have an opportunity to review them? Are there any questions or are there any corrections, additions, or deletions that need to occur? This is for the May 13th. Seeing none, and let me remind everyone that only those who attended the meeting can vote on minutes. You can't vote on something you were not present for. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from May 13th? I have a motion from Dan. Do I have a second? I have Joyce giving a second. All in favor? raise your hand or say aye, for those of you I can't see. Motion passed, and they are adopted. The next one is the, yes, from what I could tell, it was unanimous. The next are the minutes from the June 10th meeting. Did everyone have an opportunity to review those? I believe they were sent out yesterday. Yeah, are there any corrections, deletions, or additions to the June 10th minutes? Seeing none, could I have a motion to accept the June 10th minutes?
Terry?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. There on here where it has COVID strict time, I was just like that, and it's just spelling errors, the sick time. And
Okay.
and also that we need to know who submitted the minutes. There's no name on here.
Right. Who perfected these minutes? I'm not sure.
When I sent them out, I realized that I forgot to put my name at the bottom of them after.
Okay. So Linda Weller.
I didn't think I hit the space button.
Any other additions, corrections, or deletions? So we have corrected minutes. I'll entertain a motion to accept them.
I move that we
Joyce,
accept them.
do I have a second? Anitris? All in favor, either raise your hand, or if you're invisible, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? They are accepted and can be now placed on the website as corrected. By the way, Allison, what we do is we write across them that they are a draft until they are accepted. Now the June 24th minutes of the special meeting to set up our election and annual meeting. Are there any corrections to this? Any additions or deletions?
Terry?
Yes.
On the second page, where it says Terry also discussed posting those to the website and that was just left blank. It looked like that should have been a sentence complete.
Yes. We wanted it posted to the website and on Facebook and the hub.
Okay.
Any other corrections? Deletions or additions? Could I have a motion to accept the minutes, please? That's Gloria. Do I have a second? Dan? All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Accepted unanimously. Now, the minutes for the annual meeting, we do not accept those. We do not accept those. Those have to be accepted at the annual meeting by the entire membership that shows up. So those basically stay in abeyance until hopefully next May. We do have the minutes of the special meeting that was held, the reorganization meeting held right after that. Are there any corrections to those minutes? I have one. The one correction I had, it posted that for Linda Weller, there was 4 votes for treasurer, and there were, what I counted was 2. I just wanted that correction in there. Not to be embarrassing, I just want it to be accurate. Any other? Things are very short, and I think you received those a couple of days ago. Seeing none, could I have a motion to accept the minutes from the special reorganization meeting last Wednesday? Anitris, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Dan,
Oh, okay.
all in favor? Raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? They are accepted. So we have accepted 4 sets of minutes. Our next order of business, if I can find my agenda, is the Trojans report, which you received belatedly. Barb accidentally sent them to the wrong email, or didn't send it to the entire group. She just sent it to one, apparently. So you only had a short time to look at that. Are there any questions on that, or do you wish to table it to look at it more fully? What is the pleasure of the board? And Allison, you and Kathy, you can participate in this discussion because it doesn't take any previous knowledge and you didn't have to be involved.
Okay, thank you.
So are there any questions? Do you wish to adopt these right now? Adopt this report? If so.
I move that we just delay them and do them the next
Okay,
round.
very
Give people
good.
ample time to just look at them.
Okay, so we have a motion to table them until our next meeting. Do I have a second for that? I have a second from Gloria. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Opposed? So we are going to table the Treasurer's report for June until next meeting in August. Discussion of trustee training. I did send out some information, a couple of things. I wondered if everybody was able to receive their green book. This is the latest edition of a handbook. It's kind of what our Bible to run by. And if you have your current set of the policy handbook, which includes our bylaws, board policies, employee handbook, and additional information. Everybody,
Terry?
yes.
I have already gotten the green handbooks from Nioga, and Barb has put together our Hoag notebook as well with everything contained in it. Dan got his. Did you pick yours up, Dan? It doesn't matter. But for Allison and who's my other person here?
It'd be Kathy.
Oh, yeah, it'll be whoever Kathy appoints. They are ready to be picked up. So Allison, I'll see that you have it before you leave.
Are you here, Allison? Are you in the building?
No, I'm at my house.
Oh, I thought so. I didn't think we had any knotty pine. So, but you're just a short distance away. So, one of the things that came out in my readings and also discussions we've had on the board was a need for trustee training. The Green Book does do actually has you look at a variety of different resources. I just gave a couple. One was the webinar, What Every Trustee Should Know. I thought it was really helpful. Some of the stuff I knew, but it was good to review it, and other stuff was brand new. The other thing that they referred me to was information on nonprofits in New York State. So in essence, we're kind of, as a free association library, we're actually have kind of 3 bosses. Certainly the nonprofit laws, because we are a nonprofit organization. Unlike like a school district library or a town library, they're covered by a different set of rules that way. We do fall under the New York State Education Department, so we are governed by their rules as well. And the last thing is obviously the handbook for library trustees. We are exempt for certain things through them. Other things we are not. But basically, from what I could gather from the webinar and some other sources that I looked at, the requirements are pretty much the same, whether for our fiduciary relationship, our fiduciary responsibilities for appointing people, our selection process, or the one thing we have to do is appoint a director when that comes into being. That's the only personnel person who we oversee directly and who we appoint ourselves. All other positions are selected by the director, but we, by law, have to appoint them. And it has to be shown in the minutes that somebody has been appointed by the board. One of the things I also got from the webinar and from the nonprofit is in the minutes, although our accountant, when they did the audit, said that we did not have to register them. We didn't have to approve any pay raises or pay any stipends. Actually, the law says that we do have to do that. That has to be recorded in the minutes for all employees. So those are things that we need. One of the things they suggest is we start out with a tour of the building for all trustees, which makes it kind of difficult because of COVID-19. But also they talk about, in another place, of having basically an information thing that has your charter, your bylaws, your organizational chart, those kind of things, all in one place. The one webinar that I saw on that said we should have it in a lockbox, our charter in a lockbox. The director should have a copy of it, and the president of the board should have a copy of it, just in case there's any problems. Let me ask this. What are some of the things that trustees would like to have as far as some training? I know that Niagara provides trainings. Are there specific areas that would be helpful for our board? Things we struggled with? No? I would encourage everyone, if they haven't watched the webinar, what every trustee should know, I would encourage you to watch it. It was at times rather dry. It's about an hour long, but it is very helpful. So if you have that opportunity, I can send that link out to you again.
I like the training that Betty Sue had set up with Niagara when they came in and did that. I'm not sure if they'll be doing anything virtual, but that was a good training.
And they provide other ones as well. Right, discussion of committee responsibilities and opportunities. I sent out an email belatedly today with a list of our committees and various things that that I thought that they could work on, and I want to emphasize it is not an exhaustive list. It is my list. That can be changed, but there are a number of things that our committees should be doing and can do. One of the things that I have gleaned from the training, and I remember from my previous stint on the board, committees really do the majority of the work for the board, and they bring the information to the board, make a board report, and those are where the things are adopted. We have kind of morphed into most of the business occurring at the board level, and I would like to go back to the committees. It's faster because our committees are 3 or 4 people. Remember, we can't have any more than 4 people on a board, or else it becomes on a committee, because otherwise it becomes a quorum, and that becomes an official board meeting. By the bylaws, The president is an ad hoc member of all committees. I'm not going to attend committee meetings unless I'm requested to. I feel that I want the committees to have free reign to do what they feel is appropriate without me being involved. I plan on being involved in 2 committees just as a member of the board, and that is finance and buildings and grounds, because that is an area where I have some expertise. We've had 2 people volunteer already to be the conveners for 2 committees. Dan has volunteered to be the convener for the planning committee, and Gloria has volunteered to be the convener for the personnel committee. And I would like, if we can, to get those set up as soon as possible. There are a number of things both committees have to develop. One of them, for the planning committee, they need to develop, along with the director, a 1-year plan and a 5-year plan. The second thing that the personnel committee has to do is I would like them to deal with the COVID-19 PTO and provide a recommendation to the board if we can by the August meeting. And also, one of the things that's recommended by our auditor is develop a new agreement with the director for her employment. That has not been done in about 4 years, and we should do that again. So those are a couple of things for both the planning and personnel committee. Are there people who are interested in serving on either of those committees right away?
Ma'am.
Joyce?
I'm interested in the personnel committee and the finance committee.
Hey, Gloria, you want me on personnel again? I'd be happy to do that with you.
Yes, Debbie? So there are 3 for the personnel: Joyce, Gloria, and Debbie. On finance, we have Joyce, Gloria, and myself. Anyone else that would like to serve on either personnel or finance at this point? Planning committee. Someone that would like to serve with Dan on planning committee?
Oh,
One of the things, okay, we have Allison. One of the things that Dan has talked about is doing some brainstorming sessions, setting it up for the entire board and staff as best we can to develop a variety of ideas that hopefully might be useful to the library. Do we have a third person?
Did you say he would develop it with the staff?
With the board the board and the staff working together. Kind of a brainstorming session.
Is that legal?
Yeah, why?
They're not our employees.
No,
Right.
no. They're participating in a workshop to develop ideas. We aren't directing them in any way.
But it kind of is, because it would be the board working with the staff. That's the director's job. I mean, it says in the handbook, we're only Betty Sue is our only person that's responsible to us. And like the school, you can't blur those lines.
I mean, if we want to discuss ideas, we really should take them to Betty Sue. And she has the ultimate to decide because she's our employee.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is a workshop, we're not directing anything. We're not making any decisions. It's called brainstorming. And when I was a school employee, we actually had, it was something that was done, administration and teachers. We had board members. And in fact, a couple of times at the BOCES I worked in, we had massive workshops. And it had board members, superintendent, assistant superintendent, all the administration, and teachers, and we all sat in small groups, and just tried to develop ideas. And we're not directing anybody to do anything.
I would rather use the ideas board that the school just used. Maybe Mrs. Harling can chime in, where, you know, Betty Sue can gather that information. Everyone just drops stuff in anonymously, and that way the board isn't involved with the employees, because we only have one employee.
And it may appear like, you know, because of the role that we have, any interaction we have with the staff is going to be perceived as a direction from the board. We may not say it's direction from the board, but because we are on the board, and if we say, I think we should do X, Y, and Z, and it didn't come from Betty Sue, they would assume because we're the board that we're directing them indirectly to do those actions. I understand what you're saying, but that's the perception is reality.
Well, in my experience, I've done this in a variety of settings, and
I
never
will
was
say
there a
that when,
problem.
I do understand what you ladies are saying as well. I've actually asked Mr. Bonnewell in the past about sitting on committees with staff members, and he's not allowed it. He does not want the board to interact on business that is considered to be day-to-day administration of the school. And the idea board that Linda was talking about is a great resource. It allows you to spit all your ideas out there, and then people can go on and rate your ideas. So it brings the most valued ideas to the top, and you can go through and see everything that people have said, and you can see which ones more people have agreed with. It's a thought exchange, I think it's called. It would be worth looking into, I think, if there's some question about whether it's appropriate or not.
Well, okay. Well, like I said, these are opportunities for the committees to be involved in. And the board, as a board, we can say we don't want to do that, but I don't want to stifle a committee either. I think there's been too much of that stifling the committees. Actually, the question was, is there anyone else who would like to serve on the planning committee with Allison and Dan at this point in time? If not, if somebody, you know, if you do decide you want to, please email me about that. Buildings and Grounds Committee.
I was on that before.
Yes.
I'll be on that again.
And as I indicated, I would like to be on that because there's some things we started and like to complete. And
I would be on
Anita's
that.
and Linda. Now, one of the advantages with COVID-19, we've discovered Zoom, and as long as we follow the open meetings law, we publish that we are having a meeting, we can do Zoom meetings for our meetings. Although technically, from what I've read, we don't necessarily have to follow for committees the open meetings law as an association. They encourage that we do a best practice of that, just so that we're transparent to the public. Nominations and elections, the only person that cannot participate on that is Gloria, because she's going to be elected up for election next year. So do I have any people who would like to be on nominations and elections? There are a couple of things. One of the things that we should look into, considering our current state, is what kind of ramifications, what kind of things would we need to do if we wanted to try absentee ballots, and not necessarily the entire election as absentee ballots, but if we, even in a normal year, how would we do absentee ballots? It'd been discussed for several years about having absentee ballots for the library board. So if somebody was in Florida or California or something like that, but they still wanted to vote, they could still do that with an absentee ballot. Do I have any volunteers for the Nominations and Elections Committee? None? Right, if you do have that, do decide you want to do something like that, let me know. Local history, traditionally, one of the things we've done is we've had people like Bill Lattin, somebody from the Cobblestone. This is one of the committees where we've had outside members, outside people participate because it's kind of a unique committee. A couple of the tasks that I think we have to do is inventory some of our archival and historic things, and so that we know that we have them for insurance purposes, and then also a method to loan them out to other institutions if we so desire, and also if we're going to display some of them. Obviously, we have the flag, the Civil War flag, which right now I guess is being restored or at least evaluated. We also have a letter from George Washington, I believe, and one or two other items. But we should find out, number one, their worth of other items, but also how would we display them? Is there anybody who would like to serve on the local history committee? No one at this point? All right. If you are interested, please forward that. I will be talking to some of our local historians and seeing if they are interested in being involved. The last thing is Friends of the Library. We're all, if we are all considered Friends of the Library, we can participate in their meetings. Generally, we have one or two people who participate on a regular basis and bring back information. Sometimes people from the Friends come and participate in our meetings or let us know what's going on. But generally, we've had at least one or two board members who go. Are there any people who want to be active with the Friends on a regular basis? It's another meeting generally on Tuesdays prior to our meeting, I believe. Again, if you're interested, let's move forward on that. Let's move into old business. If we could get a grant, update on the grant for the NYSERDA. Have we heard anything at this point? I can't hear you.
I had to unmute. No, I have not. I have applied. I have made phone calls into the person and he just haven't gotten back to me.
Okay, my understanding is NYSERDA has basically been on a hold pattern for.
They have been.
Months.
I was not even allowed to submit the application until it was sometime in June when they started re-meeting on some of the issues. But I was told there is money, and I will reach out again and see if anything else is happening.
Yeah, they're back. My understanding is they're quite backlogged. Back in October, one of the ideas brought to the board was a chart of contracts and policies, when contracts were up, when policies like insurance policies, things like that are up. Is that in the works? Is that something we can have soon?
Well, I have started putting things together as long ago as that happened. I have not sent it out to anyone because as I looked at the notes from that meeting, the last time the Building and Grounds Committee met, it was, hold on, I have it written right here. Okay, I started putting together a list of things that need to be put on a yearly calendar so that we are aware when they are going to come due. For example, we had a problem because we didn't know when train was coming, for example. There are HVAC people and they change our large filters, but instead of coming 4 times a year, when we need to have the small filters changed, we need to know those dates here. So they will come twice a year to do an overview of the whole system. And then the other 2 times in between, I need to have it on a calendar, say, ooh, it's October, we need to change one of the small filters. So that's the kind of thing that I was looking at for 4 times a year. We've already had a contract for carpeting. Jack Burris comes 4 times a year. You may want that bid again. You may not. I don't know. I've established the dates for when we need to put the ads out for lawn mowing bids and snow plow bids, etc. I also started a list of things that we need to consider that are part of the building. For example, our window blinds do not work satisfactorily. We need to consider when you are going to want to either reupholster some of the furniture in the lounge because it's starting to wear, or whether you're going to want to replace it with something that's not as fabric oriented as far as cleaning is concerned. So those are all things. But when I went back, I decided not to send this out because in the October meeting of the Buildings and Grounds Committee on October 8th of 2019, it said the Building and Grounds Committee will put on a spreadsheet such items as wooden floor care, rug cleaning, upholstery cleaning, window cleaning, filter replacement, and other items that are regular maintenance. So I felt it was inappropriate for me to be sending out something when the committee had directed me that they were going to do that. The next one that was in that report as well says for items that are in the developmental stage, a spreadsheet should be developed with items needed to be done, who is working on a specific action item, and when they are completed. So those are 2 and totally different tasks, but it has appeared to me that the Building and Grounds Committee wanted more of an input on this than just having me develop it.
Well, I thought the discussion was more in terms of things like the liability insurance, the board insurance.
That was never that was never in the minutes.
For the thing.
That was never in the minutes from the Building and Grounds Committee meeting.
My understanding is when those contracts were up, we talked about, for instance, some of the contracts, although we renew them yearly, giving somebody like the snow plowing a 3-year window and when that would be up and things like that.
We've talked about that in general meetings, and this is the end of the 3 years on that. So there will be going, in fact, we put out the bids, even when it wasn't 3 years for snow plowing, but Timothy Newton has come in with the exact same price 3 years in a row. One of the years I did not bid it because I thought, well, who's going to beat the price we paid the last 2 years? But as it was pointed out to me, sometimes somebody else can undercut it without my even being aware of it. We were very pleased, but I told Timothy already this year, we will be bidding that. Some of the things we try to bid are a real problem. I could not get one single contractor to bid putting the resurfacing the driveway, sealing it, not one. So it was a matter of going through Ron Tower, who works sporadically for us, and he's going, I'll find you somebody. So you can put lots of things in place, but when nobody wants to do it, it makes it real tough. I don't know if you are going to want to bid out to the HVAC again. I think it may be time to look at that. We've been with Train for quite a while. They were Gerster Train, and it started as Gerster. It was a locally owned Buffalo company. Then they went to Gerster Train. Now they're corporate. So their whole mindset is changed. And the people that we dealt with when it was just Gerster or Gerster Train they're not real happy. So that may be time to look at finding somebody else to look into this. Another example is we've had trouble with the venting in the attic that comes out from the boilers that are on the walls. Right. The air, I'm sorry?
Right. I said correct.
Okay. The Gerster Train quoted as a price of, I believe, $2,000 some odd to fix this. But because we've had a relationship with the employees, they said, you know, you might want to just find a local person and they can probably do it without having to go through OSHA, without having to hire, union, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it's taken a long time to touch base with Kurt Strickland. And he did one of them for us, and it seems to be working. So he's coming tomorrow to look at it and inspect it. It's been there since March. So we've had time to watch it. The two concerns were if it goes out too far, it gets knocked off. If it doesn't, then the soffit is getting destroyed. He quoted me a price of doing it for somewhere in the $200 to $300 range. So he's coming to look upstairs tomorrow. And those are just examples of some of the things that have been issues. Some of them are yearly contracts. Some of them are things, uh-oh, look what just happened. So any guidance, I will be happy to send out this list that I put together, but when I was going to do it before this meeting and saw that it had been requested that the committee put it together, I didn't want to step on toes. So whoever's on the Building and Grounds Committee, let me know what you want me to do, because I understand that we want all of this stuff coming through committees now and being reported by the committee. So as an employee, I'll do what the committee wants.
Right.
Just let me know.
Okay. Next thing was I brought up was the code of ethics for board members. One of the things that they talk about in the Green Book is developing a code of ethics for board members. We have sporadic things. I proposed one thing about being involved with HVAC, some of the technical things that board members should not be involved in. That those are all employee kinds of things. Is this something we would like the planning committee to take a look at, is developing a code of ethics for board members? That would fall under their jurisdiction, I believe.
Are we talking about Kevin and dealing with I mean, if that's what we're talking about, let's just put it out here on the table. Because
well, I think it's that was part of it, but in the book it talks about developing a code of ethics for board members, and that to me would just be one phase of it. So that there's no, you talk about demarcations of board versus staff and making sure we can continue to do that. And what I'm saying is, would we like to refer that to the planning committee and do an overall kind of taking a look at ethics for board members?
I personally think the ethics for board members should be a boardroom discussion with everybody. Because there's going to be such a wide variety in opinions that would be the one thing to put in the hands of 3 or 4, even though they would be, I feel, very trustworthy and highly ethical people. It is something that everyone is responsible for.
Absolutely.
And it is something that I feel like if we're going to talk that, we need to dedicate some time and have an agenda just on that, and make a discussion. So when we walk away, we won't be bringing it up every other month.
Right. Well, we can have a special meeting just trying to develop a code of ethics for the board meeting. It would be a special meeting, but we could do that if that's the pleasure of the board.
May I say something at this point?
Yes.
Okay. I think what I'm having a little problem with listening to this is it does appear to be about Kevin and the fact that he has been in and out of this library taking care of things for the entire 5 years I've been here. I am not sure what you are going to want me to do, because there is no one who knows this building. And for me to try to learn all the technicalities of it is more than I can or want to handle. Now, I do pretty well. I go upstairs when they come and we can look at the parts and the problems, and I've had a nice relationship with the people because they know that I know what a Fernco is, or I know what a nipple is, or I know these other things. But when it comes to the actual operation of this building, your only employee is Ron Tower, who does part-time work per an hourly basis and doesn't touch any of this stuff. I'm
Well-
not sure what I'm going to do, because
Right.
when there's a fire here, Kevin was usually on site before I even got a phone call because he's a block away.
We had a
So-
fire here?
When we get alarms in the middle of the night,
Oh,
he's
Well-
been the
Right.
person to call. Are they
Well-
going to call you now?
Well,
That's what
pri-
you have to decide, because as
That's-
you're talking about two different things. You're talking building management and you're talking ethics. And they're two vastly different things. The
Yes.
ethical issue is something you're going to have to figure out as a board, but the building operational issues are the ones that I cannot do alone, period.
So,
pri-
you know what?
prior, could I say?
can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Because I don't want Betty Sue stressing out over this
I'm
issue.
stressed.
Because I think that it's great to have someone that knows the building. However, I do think that we as a board, if we're going to have someone doing something like that, that there has to be some type of
I agree.
monetary reimbursement, because and I'm not saying how much it has to be, but I'm saying that because to have someone do it and they're not an employee, or they are not in any way associated with the library currently, that, and if there is a problem, then we're definitely at fault. That being said, we are dealing with two different issues.
Mhm.
One is how we're managing the logistics of this building,
Mhm.
and the other one is ethics, because it's
Mhm.
our fault as a board that it happened in the first place.
Yep.
When we first got that in as a board, we should have made sure that we had the appropriate staffing or company available to do this, and that wouldn't be an issue. That being said, it is what it is right now. And we have to look at it in terms of liability, because we don't want the building to burn down. We do need to have someone who's able to come when it's needed and not when it's convenient. I understand Howard may know it, but he's part-time. If he's on vacation, then what do you do? So to me, maybe the planning committee can start to generate some idea of how to, what to do about that particular issue. And in the meantime, we'll look at the ethics of how the board gets involved in the day-to-day management that we shouldn't be, which causes problems like this.
Later on.
Right. And
Yep.
prior to Betty Sue coming here, the director and staff members, generally it was the library assistant and the children's librarian, because they tended at that point in time to be the most senior people or closest. They were the ones who received the burglar, or when the alarms went off. It wasn't board members at all. As far as the HVAC, that was handled in-house. In fact, I handled it, and I was the one who resolved the problem, because we were having condensation over the desk.
Yes, I've dealt with it several times.
And I was the one who found out. I didn't discover it. Somebody showed me how to do it. And basically, a lot of that stuff is a staff function to me. I mean, handling when the heat comes
I'm not
on and all
worried
that.
about the
No.
stuff that is taking place
No.
in the building while we're here. What I'm worried about is when it's something extraordinary and the fire department calls and wants to know where our knock box is, or somebody calls for something else. No one here, and maybe your previous directors, including you, were much better at this than I am, and maybe you didn't have to do as many other things. But somebody needs to be employed who knows some of this stuff, even if it's just a part-time position. I feel very strongly about this.
It's like both of you, in my point of view, have some
Valid
real
points.
credible issues.
Yep.
I think what we need to do is somewhere in between. I do think we need someone on staff that can be trained on some of the logistics of this, because it's not like it was 5 or 10 years ago where you come in, you click a switch and things ran or not ran. It's not an air conditioner like we have at home. So it's more complex. And when they train you to be a librarian, they didn't say, I'm gonna teach you a real mechanic for the building. That was not what you were trained for. So I think we definitely have to look at this from the planning perspective and come up with some ideas that the board can make a decision on, because it is not cut and dry. And we need to be honest, we need to be working together to make this work, because pointing the finger right now is not going to get us where we need to be.
Nope.
And we cannot afford to have
That's
this
what we're doing.
building go down because we don't want to work together. We need to work together.
So what you're saying is we'll refer to the planning committee to take a look at this.
Okay.
All right, very good. That's a good thing for the planning committee to take a look at. Another thing that, and this cropped up in the training, and there were articles during COVID from I think it's NYLA, they have a brochure they send out like every 2 months or something of that nature, as well as their online things, talking about disbursements. And one of the things that I learned is that we are responsible for every penny that is dispersed from the library. And we need to have a disbursement policy watching that. I know we've had various ones where we allowed the director to spend up to $500, and then we've increased those amounts. One of the things that I learned from this was that even though the director has a right to spend up to a certain amount, all those disbursements need to be reported by the board to the board. And all of them, all of the disbursements, we have to approve them. We can't just approve the treasurer's report, we have to approve disbursements. So I did some digging and actually got some advice that one of the things we could do is have the finance committee approve all disbursements up to $1,500, and anything over that they would approve, but they would also send to the board to be approved. But one of the things that we would have to do is describe or show all of our disbursements throughout every month. Things such as payroll, the power company, gas company, things like that, we can pre-approve that they be paid, but we have to approve them at a board meeting after they've been paid so that nothing ever lapses. The same thing with payroll and that kind of thing. But everything I've read is that we have to approve every single penny that comes out of this building.
So, excuse me for just appearing to monopolize, because I just want to make sure that I understand. So what you're saying is that our previous treasurer's reports were insufficient?
Yes,
Because-
from the standpoint, they gave us all the information. You have to have those, the balance sheets and things like
Right.
that. But we also, we have to approve all the disbursements that come out of that. And really what it is from what I've read, we are the representative of the taxpayers, and we should be able to say, yes, if somebody walked up to us and said, who paid for the candy for the Strawberry Festival? We have to be able to say either we did or the friends or whoever is appropriate. We should have a pretty good idea of where our money and how it's spent, and we need to approve it, or else from what I've saw in the webinar and what I've read in the book is we're considered delinquent.
Okay, so you're asking that when we get the treasurer's report, that at our monthly meeting, that there is a breakout of the subdivisions down to, like, let's say we had a children's fair and they bought 50 pencils, 100 balloons, that you're gonna those need to be enumerated with the costs so that they're approved?
The
Or
check,
do I have it wrong?
well, we wouldn't get into how many pencils and things like that. We would want to know who the disbursement was to, for how much, and what
Okay.
purpose,
Okay,
and what, under what budget line it falls to. All right, so that is one of the things that I have brought up. We can refer it to the committee to work on, but my concern is, while our audit said that, you know, it's fine, as I'm reading through this, we're supposed to have a disbursement policy, and we have to watch every single penny, and just approving the treasurer's report is not the same thing as approving disbursements. So could that be something we would refer to the finance committee to take a look at?
yeah. Yeah,
Because I'm concerned. I want to make sure that we're following the law and just follow the law. I want to do it right. And I don't want a situation where somebody comes in and said, and one of the things in the webinar, the guy said, if you haven't been audited by the state, you will be at some point in time. And if they look at our disbursement policy, I'm concerned that it may not be appropriate.
well, all I can say is that the auditors that audited us, no one was paying them under the table to say what they said. No one was saying, no one paid them to say what they said. And they said, they actually said we had good practices. Now, that being said, if you're looking at having us change, and if it becomes, because sometimes when you do a correction, the correction ends up creating more hazards than what was going on before. I'm willing, as part of that committee, to look at what you're saying. But I do think before we say that what we were doing historically was wrong, that we need to first look at what you're asking, because from the point of view that I was at, I did not think that the practice that we had was not too far off the mark. Now, I know when we were on the library board, we would get disbursement approval sheets. So I guess as part of the finance committee, we could take a closer look at that. But I'm going to take another look at that audit, because they don't just audit us. They audit a lot of other places. And if they don't get it right, giving it to us, then maybe we need to change them if they're not right.
Well, they're a commercial auditor. They don't necessarily specialize in libraries per se. And they're talking about general auditing procedures as opposed to what meets.
You know
New
any
York State.
library auditors?
Pardon me?
You know any library auditors?
Not off the top of my head. No, I'm sure there are companies that deal specifically with libraries. But
Okay.
I think one of the things that would be helpful, if people haven't watched the webinar about what every trustee should know, it would be helpful because that's where I got a lot of this information.
Okay.
So.
I mean, every time we've gotten these things, the finance reports, and we've had a question, they've always been able to give us what it was for and what it's about, and all the detail we need.
I understand. What I'm talking about is a procedural thing that's required by the nonprofit law and by New York State education law. Before, in the mid-2000s, when I was on the board, we received a list of all the disbursements and who they're made out for and what the purpose was. And we had to approve all those. Mm-hmm. On the town board, we have to have 3 board members plus the supervisor audit every single one. We receive the bill and the check, and we have to sign off on it. And then at the board meeting, we approve the vouchers. As a separate part, we approve the town clerk's report, which deals with what are in the bank accounts and those kind of things. So it's two separate things.
Can I make a proposal that we pass this on to the finance committee,
Sure.
and that after their meeting, that they report back to the board what their findings are and what the disposition is, so that we don't beat this horse to death tonight?
Sure.
And I would like to make a comment real quick. There must have been a policy years ago, because I have one in front of me, but it's no longer in the current notebook that we have. And it's 4.3, disbursements of funds. In the very first sentence, all funds dispersed for the library must be approved by the board at a regular meeting. And then they have the procedure, but somewhere along the line, I don't know why it's no longer in our books, but at one time they did have a policy as regards to the disbursements of funds.
So we'll bring that and we'll take a look at it and see if it needs to be reinstated.
Good, that'd be great. I guess we wanted an update on the roof. We had a shingle fly off the roof.
Yep.
Anything that's, any progress on that? I know it was in the winter time and before
I
COVID.
have done absolutely nothing because I have heard nothing, and now we can't find the shingle. So I don't know where it went. I haven't got a clue, but I have no idea. Somebody moved the shingle. And I don't think they were going to stand behind it anyway, based on the questions and the runaround I was getting. I thought if we could find out where it came from, if push came to shove, we might have to go to the lawyer on it. But I can't find it, and I can't see it anywhere. So I welcome you to go take a tour and see if you can find where it came from.
I was going to say, would it make sense to have somebody, a roofing contractor, go up and inspect the roof?
I don't know. That's for you to decide.
Building and grounds.
Okay, buildings and grounds.
Okay, you already talked about the HVAC that Kurt is coming tomorrow.
Yes.
One of the things is we wanted an update on the weather vane that Wilcutt's had donated to, and apparently the property's been sold.
Yes.
So
yes.
where's it stand?
I think the weather vane might be out next to our condenser. I don't know that, but somebody just mentioned today, because I wondered, I got a hold of Ron and said, please pick it up and put it somewhere on the back of the property. And someone today just mentioned having seen it. And I'm like, what? So I will look. In fact, when there's a little break in the action, I'll go see if I see it.
Somebody had asked me about it because we brought it up and hadn't heard anything. The other thing was the book.
Can I just ask, what are we supposed to do with the weather vane?
I don't know. That's what.
Well, that's something that we were going to discuss and
Yep.
figure out where would we put it? Is it what's it made out of? Is it rehabable? It was a donation of a historic item, and the board did vote to accept it. We realized that it may be in such bad shape that it may end up going into a landfill, but we weren't sure. Dan, you had something?
Yeah, was that part of the old library? If I'm not mistaken, that was
No.
on the, no?
No,
Oh,
it's from the original Swan estate.
Mhm.
oh, okay.
Did you just mention the book machine?
Yes.
Okay, two things. I wanted to have that on location when the school year started. I thought, what a wonderful way to start it. My thought is that we've done the birth to 5 book for the kids, and that we would continue with ages 5 to 10 with the book machine under the same thing, as well as periodically kids can earn a coin or whatever. The two things that I'm concerned about are, I don't want this in here if we aren't having numbers of kids coming in on a regular basis. So I really have held off for that reason. Number two, My original thought was to have it somewhere right in this foyer area, which I would have cleared with people before I did it. But I have to reorder the magazines for next year. And every year, the number of magazines just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So now what I will be asking people is, what do you think of the idea of shrinking part of the magazine display rack and putting the book machine there? The money is there. I have the information. I have picked out the one I would like. And as soon as it looks like it's something we can really make a big deal out of, I would like to have it in place. Unless you tell me you want it here, even though we aren't hosting programs on site and there aren't that many kids coming in, everything else for the kids is being done virtually. And if they come in to get their Birth to 5 books, there's no program anymore. They just come get it. So it could be done. It could be installed
Dan?
next week.
Oh, Betty Sue, I heard a lot of positive feedback on that reading in the yard with the signs.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
That was, you can thank Nioga for that. They usually have interns that come to them through the Greg Lewis Foundation, and they come out and do programs on site for every library who wants to have them. And they do usually 2 a week. They can't do that this year. So they are spending the time with these interns coming up with other projects. So they did the signs and then sent them, and Teresa put them out. And the next time we get signs, they're going to go to the cemetery. We cleared that with the village, and I got the insurance papers that to file with the village. And Jason up there has said absolutely no problem. So we will do them somewhere at the cemetery on one of the walking paths.
Yeah,
So
the ones I
tell
talked.
people to look for more.
Yeah, the ones I talked to said they were very excited and can't wait to see the next ones.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Are there any other items on old business? We can move on to new business.
Wait, I have a question, Terry.
Yes.
Just that there were 2 items, I didn't know if they've been removed or not, that were on my list. One was conflict of interest and the other was an organizational chart. Were you talking an organizational chart that I do or something that the board is doing?
You had started that. And,
I did it. I didn't start it. I just did it.
well, I know, but there were some corrections that were made at the board meeting, and that would actually go into the, yes.
Well, then how about handing it over to personnel?
Okay.
And I'll work with personnel on it.
All right.
That's the only one that really affected me.
What was the other item?
What was it?
Oh, conflict of interest. Yeah, we all have to file a conflict of interest thing. One of the things that has come up both from the handbook and the non-for-profit, and then on the webinar, is it says that members of the board should not ever do any, or their families should not do any business with the library. In non-for-profit, it said no one on your board should do business with your organization. In other words, and one of the examples was, for instance, if you have a neighbor who mows the lawn and they want to contract to mow the lawn, that would be considered a conflict of interest, and you need to not participate. The other one they have, which is one of the things we actually do have, is that members of the library board do not have to pay fines if they have an overdue book or something like that, and that was listed as a conflict of interest. You should not do it. But both from the book and the webinar and from the not-for-profit, internal controls, I sent that there, and financial accountability for nonprofits, all 3 of them said that board members should not, or their families should not be involved in doing business with the organization. And we do have a conflict of interest policy, and the first thing it says is it should not conflict with New York state law or federal law. And I'm concerned, we have a whole procedure for people who have a conflict of interest, and I wanted to review that and see what the board thought. because it seems rather straightforward about the conflict of interest that none of us, at one point in time, I had a conflict of interest with the board, and I had to exempt myself. It was a minor one, but I had to exempt myself from any dealings with that organization. So what are the feelings of the board?
But we said we were going to discuss that at another meeting.
Pardon me?
I thought we said we were going to devote some time at another meeting.
As part of the ethics?
Yeah,
Okay. So what you're saying is we need to have a special meeting for dealing with all of this then?
yeah.
Okay.
So we can put it to rest. Maybe not have a lot of things on the agenda. We can go through and then we can just settle this policy, the ethics and conflict of interest, because that night everybody can probably sign their conflict of interest
Okay.
statement that's required.
Okay. One of the things we have, I want to say Allison, Megan has been our recorder, and I think if we're going to continue to use her, if the board says so, it says they do want to do that, we, because this is the beginning of a new board year, that we approve that and approve her rate of pay, which I believe has been $50 for a meeting. And with that, not only does she take notes, but she sends the raw data out to all the board members shortly after the meeting.
Well, I move that we approve Megan's continuation as recorder for the meetings at the stated salary, at the stated.
All right, we have a motion to approve her, Megan. I keep on saying Allison, I'm sorry. Megan as our recording secretary. Do I have a second for that?
I'll second.
We have a second. Was that Linda?
Yes.
Okay. Joyce Riley made the motion. And we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
That is passed unanimously. Megan, you have another job for a year. If the teaching gig doesn't work out, I mean, you got $50 a month. The last thing is that I have is board training on sexual discrimination and harassment. I went to a workshop last year. One of the things that is required now is that board members have to complete this training. I believe it's accessible through Paychecks. They have an online program that all board members can complete. I don't know, Mrs. Harling, do you do that with the school board? I don't know if she's still on. Yes.
I
Mrs.
am. I'm
Harling,
sorry. What was the question?
does the school board do all your board members have to complete the sexual harassment and discrimination training?
I don't believe that we do, honestly. I know it's
Okay.
something that the employees do, but I don't believe the school board has done it. Do you know, Linda? Do you remember ever doing that?
No, we've never done it.
Yeah, I didn't
Alright.
think so.
The workshop, and I think Gloria was there as well, was that we were told that all board members and volunteers should complete that.
Yes. It was a Nioga. It was a,
Niagara
and I
workshop.
might have the information at home, but it was at Nioga, one of their meetings, and it was recommended that the board members should attend sexual harassment training as well as the volunteers.
Right.
Okay, Terry, comment on that. Debbie DeBacco was essential last year in helping us get the employees done by October, because that was the date it had to be done. We have to do it every year. I would
Right.
suggest you contact Debbie, because Debbie, unfortunately, we probably won't be using you this year because Paychecks does offer it as part of their services free, but the only thing we were told is they offer it free to employees. We can check with Paychecks for board members, But if not, then I would call Debbie, because last year it was what, $10 a head, Debbie?
Yeah, but I was wondering when we were talking about that is if that's one of those conflict of interest things because it's a company I work for.
It would be, yes.
Yeah.
So basically, as the current policy stands, is that you would have to declare that that's a conflict of interest. It's kind of similar to when I had a conflict of interest, and any discussion about that you could not participate in. Some people would say you actually should leave the room at that point, but in this case, you're not in a room with us. But first, I think we should check to see if Paychecks could offer that to
Okay.
us as well. And then if not, then we'll seek other ways. What is our time? We're almost 9 o'clock. One of the things that I would like to start is talking about brainstorming of different ideas for the board, things to make things run smoother, things that the board might get involved in, policies we might want to talk about and refer to committees. We're getting rather late. I'd hope we'd be able to get through in about an hour and a half. Obviously, that was not possible. How do people feel about that, of ending every meeting with a brainstorming session? Just ideas that we may have. Any feelings whatsoever? No?
You know,
Then, since there's no feelings one way or another, our next meeting is August 12th at 7 p.m. I will tell you right now, I have a conflict. I am going to be out of town. We booked this well over a year ago. And when we booked it, I gave no thought to library board at that point in time because we had to take it when my family was all available. So I guess we could do one of three things. I could see if I can participate by Zoom from Lake George. We could have Anitris run the meeting, or we can delay the meeting until August 19th, or move it up to August 5th. What is the pleasure of the board?
Say we just let Anitris run the meeting as scheduled. What's the sense in having a VP if you're not going
Right.
to use it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what their capability of Wi-Fi is at the place we're staying, but I might be able to participate in Zoom. I'm going to guess, unless the governor says something else, that we are
No.
still going to be able to use Zoom.
Excuse me. The
Yes.
governor just came out. He's extended it through August 5th.
Oh,
Now, that doesn't mean that he won't extend it beyond that, but as of the other day, Zoom meetings were being allowed through August 5th.
Okay.
So,
okay.
All right. Is there any other further business that comes before the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
What are we doing with all the items still left?
What items are that?
Well, I brought up the email I had sent you. It was page
Oh.
43 of the handbook, I believe.
I'm sorry, I didn't write it down.
43 of the green.
Oh, the green handbook?
Yeah. Basically, it says it's critical. I'm skipping the first paragraph. Well, I don't want to read the whole. I can read the whole thing.
Read the whole thing for those that don't have the book.
What
All right.
page, Linda? What page?
43?
43. As the library's governing body and the entity ultimately responsible for the institution, the Board of Trustees has a responsibility to hire a competent professional and qualified library director as the CEO, Chief Executive Officer,
Right.
and then to regularly review and evaluate that person's performance in moving the library forward. Having hired a director, the board has an obligation to support the director wholeheartedly within the context of the employment relationship. Good communication and cooperation between the board and the library director, and appreciation of the interdependency of each other's roles and prerequisites to a well-managed library. It is critical for the board to establish and maintain clear lines of communication with the director. In general, the board's directions and intentions are communicated to the director through the president of the board or through official actions at board meeting. Individual trustees should refrain from issuing specific instructions to the director at board meetings and especially between meetings. Such individual directions are inconsistent with the concept of a collective board authority, and a library director risks being caught between conflicting intentions even among well-meaning trustees. And then it says a section with the trustees and staff. The day-to-day management of the library, including the management of staff, is the library director's responsibility. The director is the only, and that's underlined, employee overseen by the board. The director is responsible for the management and supervision of all other library employees. Trustees have a responsibility to know staff at a friendly but professional distance, to be cordial and supportive, and to promote goodwill, but they must approach staff relationships with a degree of caution. Usurping the administrative prerogatives of the library director can only undermine that person's position and authority and ultimately lead to misunderstanding and conflict. And it tells you to see appendix working together roles and responsibilities. And one of these addresses, the next one addresses what you had under personnel. Board policies, including a whistleblower policy as required by law, should clearly indicate the process for staff complaints and grievances, and the board should never get involved in such activities outside of this process. Individual trustees must never address staff complaints and grievances. Rather, they should refer the staff to the appropriate policy. If and when a grievance reaches the board level, it is usually the responsibility of the director to communicate the board's decision back to the staff. Only in those cases where the grievance involves the director should the board communicate directly with the staff. It goes on, while education law specifically prohibits trustees from receiving compensation, some trustees may act as library volunteers, especially in small libraries. Likewise, libraries without an anti-nepotism policy often have trustees, family on staff. It goes on, but I wanted that because under your personnel recommendation, your thoughts, you had be confidential place for employee concerns, and that is not a member, that is not a role whatsoever of a library trustee.
Let me, one of the things that the workshop that Gloria and I went to, this was Stephanie Adams, she indicated that the personnel committee of the library board should be, the way it's turned out, should be the place where any staff concerns about other staff members should go to. And I'm only referring to what Stephanie Adams indicated in that workshop. And I forgot to run that off, and somebody encouraged me not to send too much stuff out because, you know, I'm just parroting what a lawyer said to this group.
Right, but this is in the handbook for library trustees of New York State. I mean, this is the book that we have, and this is,
right.
You know, one of I would rather go off the book, which is compiled by New York State.
And in black and white in our hand.
Exactly.
Well, I'm just, like I said, that was something that Stephanie Adams, who works with a number of libraries in the NIOGA system, this is what she recommended. And I can provide those notes to everyone so we all be working from the same viewpoint. And if people don't want to do it that way, then that's fine. Which brought up another idea. One of the things that Gloria actually brought up, and this came out again in the webinar, Gloria brought it up last year. She'd gone to a workshop, and one of the things they encouraged is that each of the trustees have a NIOGA or a library specific email. And the reason that what's his name, Jerry Nichols, indicated we should do that is if there were ever a lawsuit, and we're receiving all this information on our personal emails then can be subpoenaed. And he encourages that all trustees have a library specific, in this case, NIOGA email. I know the town does it that way. The school board does it that way. The village supposedly did it that way, but apparently it never got activated for some of the trustees. But the whole concept is to protect your personal emails, and then it's the email you receive from Niagara is for library business only.
We had brought this up in
Yes, we did.
previous, and no one
Yes.
wanted to do it because no one wanted another email. I mean,
Right.
I went on about all this different
Yeah.
security things and foilable. I mean, everyone knows that at nauseum. So
Yeah, I remember that meeting. Linda was the one who brought that up, and I think most of us, to be honest with you, didn't agree with her, but she was the one. Linda was the one who brought that to our attention.
Right. And after I watched the webinar, I remembered the discussion, and I know I was one of the ones who said I didn't want the extra email, but after looking at that information and hearing it again, I said it'd probably make great sense if we did. So
I know Mrs. Harling can probably chime in what, my impassioned plea to the school board in doing that as well.
Yeah, I was going to. We've heard the feel from you many times, and you've convinced us all, almost all of us.
Yeah. I mean, it is a hassle to have another email. I currently have, I think, 12. So it's not one I really want to double check. And just so everyone knows, if you get an email and it's only on the Niagara system, and then you forward it to your personal email, that personal email is still foilable. So the whole thing is negated. So you can't, I had my school email originally forwarded right to my Gmail so I would get it, but that makes that whole thing foilable. So if we're not going to use it in the pure context of email, it is not going to work, and it's not worth doing, because the second you forward something from a designated email, anyone you forward it to, if you forward it, hey, you're just going to forward it to your work email so you could print it, everything is foilable. Everything. So if we can't use it in the truest form, truly it doesn't matter.
Right.
I'm changing my mind. After what Linda said, what I heard on this, I'm very much in favor of it. Plus, it would be easier for me to keep track of just the library stuff as opposed to sorting through things that come from my church and from my kids and, whatever else. And plus the problem is I'm sure all of you run into it where you get hundreds of emails every day, and a lot of them are just junk, and you click on it, try to delete them. And I have deleted some emails, not necessarily the library, but some important emails accidentally. Whereas if I had just a separate library email, I doubt if I'd be getting a lot of the junk email, and it would just be specific.
That's not what Linda, that's not what you were saying though, is it?
Well, no, because, yes, Terry may use it and only get library emails to that, but the second he forwards it to someone
I would
else.
never, like with my town board email, I do not forward it.
Right, but I'm saying all of us would have to do the same, because the second it's out, it's all foilable.
Oh, you mean, in other words, if you and I and Joyce were the only ones who had Niagara emails and other people didn't, then our stuff is foilable?
If I don't know how
No.
Yeah.
What she's saying is that, let's say I had the Niagara email and you sent something to me and I said, oh, geez, I'm not going to have time to go back to this. I'm going to forward this to my email that I check all the time so I don't forget it. The minute I send it to my
that I
Gmail,
understand.
that's what she's saying. And
Okay.
most of us, I do that. I mean, I'm always forwarding myself stuff so I don't forget it.
It's a common thing that everyone does, and that's what people don't understand. Just because we're going to go under the guise, and maybe Mrs. Harling can chime in again, the guise of a school email, the second you forward it to your work email, the other email that you check all the time, it's all going to be foilable. So if I send it from my Niagara account to my work account just so I could print it easier, now all my work email is foilable. You know, you have to be a purist at it, which isn't always easy. I will say to everyone, just create a junk email, and everything time you sign up, you have to sign up for something, just make that everything go to it, and your email box is pure that way. That way it's always interesting to say, oh, I only signed up for this, and all of a sudden you start getting all these junk emails. Now you know what company did it to you.
You want me to check with Niagara about creating emails for the board members?
Well, you could check into it, yes.
Okay, I will ask.
Is there any other business to come before the board? If not, could I have a motion to adjourn? And do I have a second? Anitris, all in favor, say aye, or get up and leave.
Thank you.
9:10.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.